Thank you. Please take a seat. All right. Over the last several weeks, we've had a bit of a break, but over the last several weeks, we have been looking at each of the 4 Gospels. Now, do you guys know what the Gospels are? No? Okay. Quick rundown. The Gospels are, there are 4 of them, represented by these 4 men across the top of my picture here. And they are the 4 books in the Bible that tell the stories of Jesus. Does anybody know their names? I know the adults will know their names. Charlie, what can you think? Not sure? Not sure. One of the adults, help out. Yes?
Matthew.
Yes, good start.
John.
John is one of them. Mark. There's one more. Luke. Okay. Matthew, Mark, Luke and John in the order that they're written in the Bible. So we've already looked at Matthew, Mark and Luke. Today we're going to look at John. John is my favourite. Yours too. John is my favourite. I think it is a wonderful, wonderful gospel. One of the things we've done is we've looked at the first words of each of the Gospels. I don't know if you remember the other ones, but here are John's first words. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. That's how John's Gospel begins. And it's very, very different from any of the other Gospels. Now, I found this little tidbit of information in my searches during the week. The Gospel of John has 92% unique material and shares only 8% of material with the other Gospels. So the vast majority of the Gospel of John is entirely unique. There's only a little section of it that's the same as the other Gospels. So I thought I'd just share with you some of the stories in the Gospel of John that are unique to John. Here's the first one. So this is recorded as Jesus' first miracle, and it's the water turned into wine at the wedding of Cana, only in John's Gospel. There's this conversation that Jesus has with a man named Nicodemus in chapter 3, again, only in John's Gospel. Another conversation Jesus has, this time a Samaritan woman at the well, again, only in John's Gospel. And this one is the raising of a man called Lazarus. Does anybody know a story in John's Gospel, aside from the obvious ones like the crucifixion and the resurrection of things, that is the same in John's Gospel as the other Gospels? I'll show you. Feeding of the 5,000. And then Jesus walks on the water afterwards as well. It's one of the only stories that's in John's Gospel, indeed in all of the Gospels. Having said all of that, the really big difference with John's Gospel is not so much the stories in it as the fact that John does a lot of explaining. If you look at Matthew, Mark and Luke, it's lots of stories. This happens, then that happens, and then something else happens. And sometimes we hear Jesus telling a parable, or he's teaching, or he's arguing with some of the scribes and the Pharisees. Lots of things, action going on. But in John's Gospel, he does a lot of explaining. So with this story, for example, John makes so much more out of this than any of the other Gospels do. So that's the really, really unique thing about John's Gospel. One last thing, it's called by many people the spiritual Gospel. And one of the books that I've got describes it this way, and it's very lovely. It says, John is like a magic swimming pool in which an elephant can swim and a toddler can safely paddle. Lovely picture. Now, as I said, we're going to hear a little bit of John's Gospel later on this evening.